So spake he, nor heedless was the messenger, the slayer of Argos. Straightway he bound beneath his feet his lovely golden sandals, that wax not old, that bear him alike over the wet sea and over the limitless land, swift as the breath of the wind. And he took the wand wherewith he lulls the eyes of whomso he will, while others again he even wakes from out of sleep. With this rod in his hand flew the strong slayer of Argos. Above Pieria he passed and leapt from the upper air into the deep. Then he sped along the wave like the cormorant that chaseth the fishes through the perilous gulfs of the unharvested sea, and wetteth his thick plumage in the brine. Such like did Hermes ride upon the press of the waves. But when he had now reached that far-off isle, he went forth from the sea of a violet blue to get him up into the land, till he came to a great cave, wherein dwelt the nymph of the braided tresses, and he found her within. And on the hearth there was a great fire burning, and from afar through the isle was smelt the fragrance of cleft cedar blazing, and of sandalwood. And the nymph within was singing with a sweet voice as she fared to and fro before the loom, and wove a shuttle of gold. And round about the cave there was a wood blossoming, alder and poplar, and sweet-smelling cypress, and therein roosted birds long of wing, owls and falcons and chattering sea-crows, which have their business in the waters. And lo, there about the hollow cave trailed a gadding garden vine, all rich with clusters, and fountains foreset orderly were running with clear water, hard by one another, turned each to his own course. And all around soft meadows bloomed of violets and parsley. Yea, even a deathless god who came thither might wonder at the sight and be glad at heart. There the messenger, the slayer of Argos, stood and wondered. Now, when he had gazed at all with wonder, anon he went into the wide cave. Nor did Calypso, that fair goddess, fail to know him, when she saw him face to face. For the gods used not to be strange to one another, the immortals, not though one have his habitation far away. But he found not Odysseus, the great-hearted, within the cave, who sat weeping on the shore even as aforetime, straining his soul with tears and groans and griefs. And as he wept he looked wistfully over the unharvested deep. And Calypso, that fair goddess, questioned Hermes, when she had made him sit on a bright shining seat. Wherefore, I pray thee, Hermes, of the golden wand, hast thou come hither, worshipful and welcome, whereas, as of old, thou wert not wont to visit me? Tell me all thy thought. My heart is set on fulfilling it, if fulfill it I may, and if it hath been fulfilled in the counsel of fate. But now follow me further, that I may set before thee the entertainment of strangers. Okay, we have a lot to cover. Odysseus, Odysseus, Odysseus. Odysseus has finally entered the chat, not even remotely in the way I was expecting, though now that I think about it, I didn't know what to expect. I guess I didn't ever really envision what our first touch point with Odysseus was going to be, though I think I could have put 100 things on paper and not arrived at the idea that he would be on the shore crying and groaning in grief, writhing in agony, basically, over his situation. I'm assuming how I'm kind of picturing him is just kind of on his knees, grasping the sand in his hands, staring out at the horizon of the ocean, crying in agony over not being able to leave, go home, see his family, which is understandable, obviously, but not how we would introduce a heroic character nowadays. Without judgment, obviously, I'm just saying nowadays we have such a penchant for wanting to immediately establish our heroic characters as these masculine ideals that, I don't know, it's kind of refreshing to be introduced to a character I don't feel who's just pouring out his emotions right away. But since we don't get much of Calypso or Odysseus in today's passage, I thought we could talk a little bit about Hermes. And yes, I have had to re-record about 6 different lines saying his name today. God, it's so hard for me. Okay, let's just go over some very basic baseline stuff about who Hermes is. Son of Zeus, we've covered that already. Messenger of the gods, we covered that already. This one is talking about him putting on his sandals and being able to fly over land and sea. Hermes' winged sandals are one of the famous divine items in mythology. One of the things I find interesting is, and I don't know if this is an interpretive thing, a translation thing, depending on who's telling this story and how they want to utilize the gods, but how their patronage is defined is often very similar, but you do start to see some slight variances. So, for instance, Hermes is the god of travel and boundaries, but I've also seen it of him being the patron of cunning, trickery, clever speech. He's not just a messenger in terms of the act of moving a message from one place to another, but also the act of communicating that message. He can move between, and maybe the one god who most often moves between Olympus and Earth and life and death, because he's also said to be the guide of souls to the underworld. I'm curious how the next couple of passages will depict him, because a lot of these gods are rather solemn, a little over serious, reflective, or pompous or bombastic, but Hermes is a bit more quick-witted, a little bit more intelligent, maybe, mischievous, a little impish. I've seen him described as morally flexible. I think you could maybe apply that to all gods, but I think when you look at it in regard to communication and intelligence and mischievousness, the morally flexible thing becomes more of a choice, maybe, than someone like Zeus, who is more morally flexible depending on the situation and the solutions that are called of him. But we've seen him called the Slayer of Argos as well. And this refers to a very specific myth where Zeus has fallen in love with Io, a mortal woman, and he tries to hide her from Hera by transforming Io into a cow. One of these myths that make you roll your eyes. Ay, ay, ay. Zeus, what are you doing? But Hera, she's a smart cookie. She is not fooled by Io being turned into a cow. So she finds a guard called Argus. He's a giant with an incredible amount of eyes, often said to be about 100 different eyes. And that allows him to never fully sleep. He always has some eyes open to watch what's going on. So Argos is tasked with watching Io constantly, probably waiting for some sign of Zeus to come back so that Hera can catch him red-handed, because he wants to free Io from his cow curse. It was meant to be temporary. So Zeus, being the dude he is, decides to send Hermes to help free Io from Argus. And Hermes goes to Argus, and being a god of intelligence, of mischievousness, he doesn't attack Argus directly. That's not his style. Instead, he disguises himself as a shepherd. He sits with Argus, he talks to him, and then he plays some music. He tells incredibly long stories, and despite all of his eyes, Argus finally falls asleep. Only once Argus has completely zonked out, that's when Hermes kills him. Clean, efficient. He makes an opportunity for himself and takes him out. Thus, Hermes gets the epithet, just like Pallas Athena, the great-eyed Athena. He gets his epithet as Slayer of Argos, or Argus Slayer sometimes. Or sometimes, and I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, I know it, Argiphantes. So he's a god who likes to outsmart things. And I think the morally flexible thing you can see in the Argus story, in that, like, he's not above killing someone when they're asleep, knowing that the opposition is a giant, not a god, but still someone who isn't just going to roll over and die. He does what he can without much moral guilt hanging over his head. And yet, there's still so much more to say about Hermes. But I think that gives us enough context to see how that is going to play into how he speaks to Calypso here. Is he going to trick her into letting Odysseus go? There's only one way to find out, and that's to keep on reading. Join me here tomorrow as we learn a little bit more Okie dokie, goodbye. Odyssey is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. The show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Odyssey, written by Homer. Theme song by Neuroflow. You can support this show and other shows like it by going to patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.